Wonderful flight routes. When you check the flight routes on Earth, you may be puzzled by some flights taking strange and seemingly irrational paths, particularly between cities in the southern hemisphere. But before delving into the natural routes, let's talk about emergency landings. Sometimes, aircraft have to make emergency landings at the nearest airport along their flight path due to mechanical breakdowns or humanitarian situations. For example, there was a Chinese Airlines flight in November 2015 that departed from Taiwan to Los Angeles, but one of the passengers went into labor and gave birth to a baby girl at 30,000 feet, as reported by the Daily Mail. The aircraft had to make an emergency landing to ensure that the mother could reach the nearest well-equipped hospital. So far, this is not unusual. However, when we examine the flight path of this particular flight, we find that it would have made more sense for the emergency landing to be in either Japan or the Hawaiian Islands, as they have sophisticated hospitals along the plane's path. Instead, the plane made an emergency landing in Alaska, which is not on the direct flight path and seems illogical. It's like a flight departing from Sana'a, Yemen, to Marrakesh, Morocco, but making an emergency landing in Baghdad. The flight originated from Taiwan and flew over the Pacific Ocean in a straight line towards Los Angeles. However, when it had to land, it ended up in Alaska, which was not in its intended flight path. This path may seem absurd and beyond the limits of logic on a globe Earth map. However, what's astonishing is that this flight path actually makes sense on a flat Earth map, with Alaska falling completely within the course of the plane. Does this imply that the plane was not flying over a spherical Earth as commonly claimed, but over flat terrain? Another similar flight was between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, where an aircraft also made an emergency landing in Alaska instead of the Hawaiian Islands due to a malfunction. Similarly, a Qatar Airways flight departing from Doha en route to Chicago had to land when a passenger was poisoned. Can you guess where it landed? Logically, they can land in Egypt, Tunisia, or Spain. They understand the course of the plane, but the fact is that the plane landed strangely at the Moscow airport, which is very far from its intended course according to the globe map of the Earth. However, on the flat Earth map, the landing in Moscow makes sense. Regular flights also take seemingly unreasonable routes on the globe map, but they make more sense if the Earth is flat, especially flights in the southern hemisphere. For example, the flight from Johannesburg, South Africa, to Santiago, Chile, is supposed to take 12 hours on a straight line, but instead, the plane heads to Senegal for refueling, and then completes the journey to Chile, resulting in a 19-hour flight. This flight path seems absurd on the spherical Earth map, but on the flat Earth map, it makes more sense. Similarly, a flight from Johannesburg to Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is supposed to take 10 hours, takes an absurd path to the north, stopping for refueling in London, resulting in a 24-hour flight. Another example is the flight from Santiago, Chile, to Sydney, Australia, which instead of taking a straight path over the Pacific Ocean for a 15-hour flight, heads north and stops for refueling in Los Angeles, resulting in a 27-hour flight. Similarly, a flight from Johannesburg to Perth, Australia, which is supposed to be an 11-hour straight flight, takes a detour north and stops for refueling in Dubai, Hong Kong, or Malaysia, resulting in an 18-hour flight. There are dozens of examples of flights that seem completely absurd on the spherical Earth map, always heading north, but on the flat Earth map, they make more sense. So, are planes flying over a spinning ball or above a fixed flat surface? Finally, if the Earth really is a spinning ball, the distance that the plane travels must vary when it flies in the direction of the Earth's rotation movement and when it flies in the opposite direction. For example, an aircraft flying from Kuwait to Algeria must travel a shorter distance than an aircraft flying from Algeria to Kuwait, because the Earth orbits underneath it. This means that the strength of the acceleration of objects must change as we rise upwards. In addition, the pilot must constantly adjust the plane's altitude to match the spherical curvature of the Earth and remain parallel to its curved surface. If the pilot were to fly in a straight line, he would find himself in space or hit the roof of the sky, because there is no such thing as space. As for the question of whether there is space, it is natural to wonder what lies above us. The bright spots we see in the sky at night, known as stars, are truly wonderful and amazing. However, before we take that terrifying step, let's return to the surface of the Earth and ponder how we see the sun emerge from the horizon in the east, rise to the top of the sky, and then disappear below the horizon in the west. Isn't this evidence that we live on a ball? If the Earth were flat, we could stand on the shores of Alexandria and see people on the streets of Italy using any powerful telescope. But this never happens, no matter how powerful the telescope is, because the Earth curves and Italy disappears behind that curvature. So, do you think the globe Earth has won this round and its weight has started to bear down on us? Perhaps not, because it all comes back to something wonderful that many people with a restful mind have failed to notice. It's something that those who refuse to be intellectually enslaved and subjected to mental programming have taken note of. It's a bit of a niche idea as only 2 categories of human beings have studied it, and according to conspiracy theorists, there was a deliberate effort to keep this idea anonymous. Are you aware of it? It's visual perspective.